Tracy alluded to earlier that she couldn't put my full title on the website, so I actually got it for you. That's the so let me go ahead and read it for you. Brine Stormborn of the house Holt, first of her name, the unburned, queen of the Andals and the first men, Khaleesi of the great grass sea, breaker of chains, staff engineer of user interfaces, and mother of dragons. I was really honored when they made me the mother of dragons. So I do work at LinkedIn now. I just see, this is now my third week or fourth, I can't remember, maybe fourth week at LinkedIn. I'm working on the learning product, which is really cool. It's like learning videos that you can watch on LinkedIn, which are kind of fun. I was previously at Netflix with Ben and Jay over here. Jay, leave. Bye, Jay. Which was fun too. I worked on the acquisitions team, which was really fun. And before that, I worked at Reddit, which was an adventure. I'll put it that way. So my first two jobs were to waste your time, and now my current job is to help you not waste time. So we'll see how successful I actually end up doing it there. I've been on Front-End Masters a bunch of times. I also do a podcast with some of my friends called Front-End Happy Hour, and I just want you all to share in my constant annoyance that one of them has a space in the front end and one does not. And I never know which one I should do. Raise your hands, who puts a space in it? One person. Raise your hands who's one word front end. With a dash, okay. Do not muddy these waters. How many of you can just not spell front end? Well, that's probably the rest of it. Okay. That's fine too. So, what's that? I lived in Utah for a real long time. Lived in Torino for a while after that, which is where Juventus is from. And now I currently reside in San Francisco, which is awesome because now I don't have to go out to Los Gatos every day, and I am very grateful for that. Why is it still there? Hold on, I'm gonna get rid of that stupid. Who has to update your dongle? That's just the least cool thing. Okay. Just killing it right now, Brandon, just killing it. All right, that is a dog. That is my dog. Her name's Luna. She's adorable. I'm paying my dog tax right now. Usually I've offended someone by this point, so I try and here's a cute puppy, I'm really sorry. So yeah, I'm at Google and at an Angular meetup, and so I'm going to try really hard not to offend Angular people because I have a bad habit of doing that. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about JavaScript, and specifically about the process of how JavaScript gets standardized. So, by a raise of hand, who here knows what TC39 is? It's most of you? Cool. There's enough hands not showing of either lazy people and or asleep people, and maybe people that don't know what it is, that I'll go and explain a little bit what's up. So, Technical Committee 39, there's a bunch of committees, so they're just numbered by arbitrary means. It's a mystery. And that's the specific committee that meets to standardize ECMAScript. For those of you that have wondered what's the difference between ECMAScript and JavaScript, ECMAScript is the name of the specification and JavaScript is the name of the implementation. Now, for most of us, we don't really have to care because as far as I know, there's just one implementation, and that's kind of JavaScript. But that is how they differentiate the two. ECMA262 is the name of the document that actually is JavaScript, and that's constantly being updated with every, ES2015, ES6, ES3, all that stuff. That's updating that specific document. And ECMA was formerly the European computer manufacturer. Oh, cool! I forgot that computer part. Manufacturer Association is no longer. Now is literally just the word ECMA, which I thought that was a prime opportunity to change their name, and they just stuck with ECMA. So, pretty creative people, as you can see. They're a group that oversees the standardization of many things, not just JavaScript. They also do things like they now do C#, and a bunch of other stuff that I really just don't care about. That's not fair. That implies I care about C#, so. I told you I'm going to offend someone. No one's leaving. Well, I guess a bunch of people left just probably aware of who was speaking. Okay. So ES3, ES5, and previous to that, those were major revisions of JavaScript. ES3 and ES5 and ES6 were pretty big revisions of JavaScript, like really big. And it took years and years and years for those to come out, and they were many years apart. When they came out with ES6, they were kind of sick of that process and waiting 5 to 10 years and having all these arguments over these major revisions in JavaScript, and they eventually came to the consensus is we should get this release cycle going, so that now it's rolling every single year. So while it's a mouthful to say ES2015, it was really nice to say ES7. It actually, I think it's really great that they switched to the ES2015, 2016, because it kind of denotes that yes, this is a recurring cycle. These are don't have to be major, huge revisions of JavaScript. There doesn't have to be all this consensus to get it out. It's a train. It's just always rolling with new features. So we skipped ES4 for many reasons. I'll actually show you what's in ES4 because it's kind of interesting. And we'll also talk about stages. So ES3, we got regex, which is exciting or not exciting, depending on who you talk to. No, it's exciting. String methods, with just very many things that they put on the strings. Try and catch were added in ES3. There's lots of other stuff. I'm just kind of giving you the highlights. ES5, we got the JSON object, so JSON.parse, JSON.stringify. JSON wasn't really a thing before that, or at least wasn't enough of a thing for us to have a whole object to take care of it built in the language. Getters and setters, which I still think are a really exciting feature that I don't see people using a whole lot. Strict mode, which was kind of a failure, sort of a failure, not really a failure. Depends on who you ask at what point and how many beers deep. And then we also got some things for doing reflection on objects as well, which is great. ES4. So let's talk about ES4, which is kind of an interesting story. It was huge. They were adding a ton of stuff. And you'll look at that and you're yeah, a lot of that just made it into ES6, right? Classes, modules, types, generators, iterators, destructuring. They pretty much added JSX, which was called E4X, which is why I'm a little hesitant on ESX, because it sounds super close to E4X. Oh, and they also added a kitchen sink too. That was a thing. What happened was they tried to add all this stuff all at once. They were all just super excited. For example, Mozilla was gung-ho, we want to add XML, which is what E4X pretty much is, directly into JavaScript. Who wants to write XML? Raise your hands. Nobody. Keep all your hands down. Nobody wants to write no, I'm sorry, you're mistaken. Just kidding. Sorry, you can like XML. I'm sorry. Yeah, so they just try to add all these things, and people were really, really some people love this set of features, some people love this set of features, and they really couldn't come to any sort of consensus. So they just abandoned ship, and they just you know what, ES4, we're just not even going to do it. We're just going to move on to ES5. It's going to be a much smaller set of things that we can all agree upon, and adopted what I like to call the Microsoft Windows naming schema, which is just skip all the numbers you don't like. And they went from ES3 to ES5. So this is what E4X was actually going to look like. And you look at that, and a lot of you are probably thinking, or maybe no one, I'm at an Angular meetup, so maybe no one's thinking, that looks just like JSX, right? That's what I thought. Except it's all XML-y, which is not my favorite thing, obviously. Okay. And so, yeah, that's kind of what it looked like, and it actually wasn't deprecated until 2014. I don't know when they actually removed it from Firefox, but I think it was in 2014, which is crazy, but kind of cool. So what makes it into JS? This is kind of a point of frustration for a lot of people, that they'll come from another language like C# and they have all these great features built in the language that make it really, really nice. And they're I love this feature. I want to bring it over to JavaScript land because it's really useful and I use it all the time in my other favorite language. And they get a lot of pushback. And so I just wanted to chat a second about what actually makes it into JavaScript. So the first thing that they're always looking for is to enable new patterns that you simply cannot do otherwise. And one of those patterns is generators, right? You can do all sorts of really interesting things in generators. They're still kind of new to us. They're not really well supported, and most of us are trying to avoid including regenerator into our Babel packages, so we're not using them quite yet. But they really do enable some interesting patterns that we were not really able to accomplish without them. So that's the first thing, is generators. The next thing would be extremely common patterns that if they existed in the language would be useful, right? And a great example of that would be promises. We were already using promises because we had something like Bluebird and all these other like RSVP, et cetera, that enabled interesting patterns of, like, in terms of how you could represent AJAX requests. You could represent basically everything that Ben was just talking about. You can represent those sorts of async sort of things. Well, what would be great then is if the browser could use them, but the browser can't depend on you always including Bluebird, right? So at that point, we're like, cool, let's bring this into the language, and now we can have things like fetch. Another one would be such common patterns like JSON.stringify. This can totally be written as a JavaScript module that we could import with NPM and bundle it. The problem is, one, we're doing it all the time. Like, find me an app that doesn't use JSON.stringify. There's, I would say, any large-scale app is eventually probably going to use JSON somewhere, right? But this is also kind of computationally expensive, so it would be great if the browser could, drop into C++ land or whatever it does to work its browser black magic, basically. Everything else should probably be added by library, right? Because at that point, we're not required. So we'll add features like classes, and classes are pretty complicated. They have a lot of difficult interactions with other parts of the language. And so once you add something like classes, now you have to make everything be able to interact with classes. So that's kind of the things that we're trying to avoid. We're trying to keep JavaScript as performant and easy to learn and easy to approach, and kind of both, something we can build applications with, and that's something you can teach new developers with. So I just wanted to kind of quickly go through the stages with you. So there's stage 0 all the way up to stage 4. And something that is stage 0 is just brand new and trying to be introduced to the language. Something that is in stage 4 is finished and going to be included into the next revision of JavaScript. So anyone can propose stage 0. You can literally just open your laptop right now and just start proposing things to JavaScript. Good luck. It's called a straw man. It doesn't have to be super complete. It doesn't have to be like meticulously thought out or planned or anything like that. You can just come in there and say, like, I think this would be an awesome addition, that there is a lolcats feature that every time you call it, it just emits lolcats out of their speakers. It's a great idea. Just thought of it literally right now. Bet you can't tell. So anyone can do it. You can do it right now. You can go open a pull request on the GitHub, which is where everything is tracked, and do that. It does not advance into stage 1 until you have someone on TC39 say, like, I love lolcats. We're going to include this in JavaScript. So it goes from being a straw man to being a proposal. A proposal is more, you'll have like a high-level API. You'll kind of think out, as like, okay, what kind of lolcat sounds do we like? Nothing's concrete yet. You can throw out all sorts of different lolcat sounds and songs and commission tryouts and sorts of things. So it's not concrete yet. It's to be hammered out in committee and discussed how we'll be interacting with other features. At this point, they're still not counting on it to make the language. So even though something makes stage 1, even though someone on TC39 thinks it's a good idea, it's still not guaranteed that it's going to make the language. In fact, I would say, this is just my general feeling, but it's still like under 50% of these things are going to make it into the language. So proposals are still pretty iffy. In other words, do not include stage 1 proposals or stage 1 preset in your Babel configuration. It's a bad idea. You're going to regret it, I promise. So it's still expected to change majorly before it lands as a feature. Stage 2 is a draft. And once it makes it to draft, there's a really good chance, like above, I'm going to go like above 80–90% that it's going to make it into the language at this point. So at this point, they need like a full draft document. And at this point, the committee is going to start planning other features around this being included. So at this point, it's assumed it's going to make it. Incremental changes are still expected, but at this point, it's expected like the dust is going to start settling. Usually way before now we have a Babel plugin, but at this point it's required to be some sort of translation where developers can probably start using it. Stage 3, once things are at stage 3, they're pretty much in the language with 2 exceptions I'm about to give you. At this point the spec must be exhaustive. Little to no changes are expected. What changes do make it are probably going to come from browser makers saying, like, you said this, and this is a bad idea, so we want to do this. And at this point, it's expected that one browser will actually have it implemented in the browser behind the flag. Almost a guarantee at this point. Something would have to like actively make the committee say, we want to actively remove this. Stage 4, it's finished. It's going to be included in the next revision of JavaScript. Every March, they basically cut a branch and say, this is what it's going, the next version of ECMAScript is going to look like, and in June they finalize it. So no changes at this point expected, and 2 browsers definitely have to implement it now. And it's also been in the wild for a little bit so that people can kind of have started using it and giving feedback, and right now it's settled. Oh, also test 262, which, by the way, if you want to contribute to JavaScript, this is a really great way to do so, is to write tests for the specs. So once it's stage 4, it must have exhaustive test suites as well. Okay, so yeah, this is kind of what I was saying before. If you miss the deadline, you have to wait until next March, so that's fine. And in July. I said June, but it's July. So if you want to know what made it into ES2017, this is what it looks like. Object entries, object values, async await. I think a lot of people are excited about that. Left pad, so we can avoid left pad debacles. Trailing commas and parameters, which I think actually I'm really excited about. And shared memory and atomics, which is more for other fun stuff. So I would say 6 to 5 was one of the most important things that happened in JavaScript in the past 10 years, and I will fight you about it. Some punk Australian kid, just kidding, Sebastian probably can beat me up, so I guess I'm the punk kid here, wrote this transpiler that takes your future JavaScript and compiles it back to old JavaScript. You might probably know it as Babel. And this was a big thing because it basically democratized how features were making it into JavaScript. Because now we get to write future JavaScript. We can get to give real feedback from real applications in the field and incorporate that into JavaScript. Before, it was just kind of browser makers and people in ivory towers saying, like, we think this might be a good idea. We're going to put with in the language, and then it turns out it's a horrible idea, right? So that's why I think Babel 6 to 5, the 6 to 5 coming around was a big deal, and then again Babel 6 was a huge thing where it broke everything into plugins, so it made it very configurable. 2 of the biggest events in JavaScript in the past, like forever, in the history of JavaScript. So that was a lot of dry stuff. So I'm just going to tell you about a few of the proposals that I'm pretty stoked about. Object REST and spread. So you can already do REST and spread with arrays, but now we're going to be able to do them with objects, which is going to be really fun too. So the first one is the REST operator, and the second one is the spread operator. Yep, every time I have to think about it and work through it in my head before I can remember which is which. It's the 3 dots operator. We'll just go with that. Regex improvements. Who here is excited about that? Look really closely to those people that raise their hands' eyes. You can see the sadness in it. Anyone that's excited about regex just has seen some shit. Okay. Yeah, I mean, me too, man. I'm super excited about it. Like, look behind. Yeah, that was just like, when you need look behind and you realize it's not there, it's a bad day. But then it's also a bad day because you need regex. So we'll get look behind, which has been a long time coming. Named capture groups is just going to make us not having to go through arrays. Better Unicode support. And it's going to support even features like only matching Greek characters and only matching like Russian or Cyrillic characters. That's going to be really nice and really sad when you need to use them. Dynamic modules. So we've had kind of what Webpack has kind of put out there for us, which is like require.ensure, and I mean all kind of bundlings. But we're getting system.import. So you're going to be able to do things like code splitting. I mean, we kind of already can, but now we're actually standardizing how we do it, which is going to be system.import. Or sorry, it's not system.import. Now it's just import. I need to update that. Yeah, so ignore the system.part. Just like put your finger over it like that. There you go. Cool. Now it says import. Semantically similar to require ensure in the sense of how we were using it. Require.ensure did other things as well, but as far as I know, no one was really using it. Global, I'm actually kind of excited about this. If you've ever had to do like, const global equals like global question mark window colon global whatever. Now you can just refer to global and it will get window if you're in the browser, and it will get global if you are in Node world, which I'm excited about. And this will also like work across everything like JavaScript and all the other ones. So that will be standardized in the language that it will just be global. New async capabilities, async iterators, which are kind of cool. So since both the next value in the sequence and the done state of the data must be known at the time that the iterator method returns, iterators are only suitable for representing sync data right now, if that kind of makes any sense to you. So we kind of want to be able to like make them be able to represent more asynchronous sources, and that's what async iterators is going to do. Problem with async iterators is it's going to have a lot of garbage collection if you're going to be using them a lot, because it's going to be generating a lot of promises. Observables, I don't think anyone here cares about observables, so we can just skip that. That was on his phone, I got him. Got him. Just kidding. I was too, except I was sitting right here with my back to him. That's awesome. Okay, so think promises with multiple returns. You can put that on your slide then.
Yeah, it is. I have that.
Okay, you're welcome. Yeah, you just heard it talked about, so I'm not going to bastardize that anymore. So async iterators can look something like this. You can do like read lines from a file, so it can be that kind of streaming file, and you can be reading for it, or you can do like those long-running HTTP requests or WebSockets or any sorts of async fun you can do with async iterators. By the way, that's kind of why observable is getting delayed so long, is because they're kind of making sure that all of the things around it, like async iterator, they're all going to play nice with each other, because you don't want to have like async iterator over here and observable over here and promise over here and like not be able to like interface with each other. So they're kind of just making sure that everything plays nicely together. New class semantics. To be totally honest with you, with everything that I am showing you today, the thing that I am most excited about is public class fields. And people are like, that's dumb. Like, why do you care at all? It makes writing React a whole lot nicer if you have public class fields. So I don't advise anyone to include underneath stage 3, and even in stage 3 I kind of question you. But I do include that one, which is stage 2, because it makes writing React just a million times better. And it's just because you can declare things like your state without creating a constructor and all like that. It's really nice. Private fields, which I don't really care about. Like, I kind of subscribe to the Python idealism. Like if you want to muddle around with the internals of something, go right ahead, but you're going to just screw things up, so good luck. Class and property decorators. Decorators are always a ton of fun. I hear Angular really likes them, so good team. I think they're cool too. Class properties, in fact I show you here with a React example. So you have that state equals up there, as well as the handle click thing where you're doing a arrow function, which is getting the context to be correct, or what you would expect anyway. So this just makes writing React really nice. Decorators looks something like that. Again, I'm using a React example because that's what I write. So hashtag sorry, not sorry. You can get out. Just kidding. You can stay. International segmenter. If you've ever needed to use this, then you're going to be really excited about this. Other people are just going to be like, I don't care. So when I was at Netflix, I was working on like the Thai, making Thai work on TVs, which is as fun as it sounds. So it's an API to separate strings into graphemes. And so, for example, where it says Io parlo italiano, like when you hit the right arrow from I to go over the O, it skips one letter, right? But when you go over there to the second line, which is in Thai, that first character is actually two different characters, right? But when I hit the right arrow, I expect it to skip the entire character, right? That entire character is considered one grapheme, right? So it's basically when I hit the right arrow, it's expected to skip one thing at a time. However, when you're in JavaScript land, those are two separate characters, right? There's two separate codes for them. And so what this international segmenter is going to do for us is it's going to do all this grapheme separating for us. For those of you that are using something like Atom, this is going to be really nice because Atom does have to worry about things like grapheme, and it is using JavaScript to do it. And lastly, if I call string.length on that emoji, what do you think the length is?
3.
No. It's 7. It's definitely 7. All right, let's see if I can remember what they are. There's definitely a skin tone. There's female. There's microphone. And some of those are length too anyway. There's several of them that get combinated. Oh, and then there's combinators as well to get that to add up to 7, which is kind of fun. Okay, generators. We're gonna get generator arrow functions. I think it's just something they kind of want to get for completeness. Function.sent, just to kind of give you a little bit of an example of what that looks like. So on my logger there, notice on the I'm doing the while true, let's see, right there. So for let of colors, generator.next color. If I did not do the console.log function sent, I would drop the first color. So the logging out of that from line 9 would be green, blue, pink, and it would skip red. So what function.sent does is it allows you to grab the first thing that the generator is called with, right? Right now you can't do that without function.sent. Null propagation operator. People are either really excited about this or not, but I think most people are pretty excited about it. If you remember, I used to have to write a lot of Groovy at Netflix. I'm so glad I do not have to anymore. Now I'm offending JVM people, so I'm just on a roll. So what's super nice about this is I'm sure most of you have had to do something like if message and message.body and message.body.user, right? And just go all the way down, or use like underscores .get operator with the null propagation operator, sometimes called like the maybe operator. So I can do message.body question mark, and then if that is null, it's just not going to error out. It's just you're going to get undefined, or in this case, you'll get default. So that'll be hopefully really nice. I think that's stage 1. Temporal, basically more same date objects, which hooray, right? I think everyone can be happy about that one. And then do expressions, which again, real exciting for React. I'm sure you people can figure out something to do with them as well. That basically allow you to do something like where you need more than just an expression. Do operators are going to allow you to do basically blocks that are going to be able to get other things than just expressions out. So you don't have these crazy ternaries, which sometimes in JSX and React land people do dumb things. Stage 0. So there be dragons here. So I was actually digging more into the bind operator today because this is a really old proposal and it's been on there for a long time, and no one's quite wants to shut it down because they're interested in the idea here. So that's a lot of code that basically where it says make request.then. Notice inside of the render it does console.table this.state.data. The problem with that is this would not be correct. The context would not be correct without that bind operator. So that : view is basically saying make sure that the this is also what I expect it to be when it's unary like that. The complaint against this is that it is messing with JavaScript context and making it even more complicated, which I'm sure most of you are aware is already pretty complicated. So I'm not super expecting to see this one make it through, at least in this particular fashion. The binary version, though, I think is really interesting. It's kind of like the pipe operator if you're coming from other languages that have that kind of niceness, right? So you have that get players, which is going to return something that can be mapped on. What? Something that may or may not be able to be mapped on. But for example, arrays don't have take while in JavaScript. like it'd be nice if they had things like that. So that's what this bind operator in the binary fashion is going to do for us, is basically it's going to be able to say, take the result of this, pipe it into the next thing, which is going to be super fun. I don't think it'll look like colon, because again, what I heard on the down low, that at TC39 they thought colon looks weird. Okay. So it might be, the last thing I saw, at least on the issues on it, was skinny arrow. So maybe we'll get skinny arrow in a different fashion. I think that's weird because fat arrows are this thing, skinny whatever, I don't care. Function expression decorators. So right now, the only decorators that are actually at like stage 2 or beyond are just for classes, as far as I'm aware. But the Angular team actually proposed this, of being able to have function expression decorators. So for example, that memoized function, you could have that just automatically be memoized with that decorator, which I think is a really, really clean way of doing it, and I'm super in favor of that. Or like that test one with the timeout, literally stole this off their documentation. Basically fail a test if it goes longer than 5,000 seconds, right? So be able to do things like that in just a really clean, legible fashion. So I'm definitely in favor of that. Parameter decorators. This one I'm a little more iffy on. That basically saying I want this last refresh timestamp, and I want it to come from this last refresh function, and kind of be injected there. It's okay. Commentary with Brian. Everyone cares, right? Everyone cares. This one's super new. Pattern matching. So if you're coming from Haskell, like I imagine you're just like jumping up in your seats and super excited about, or any sort of language like that. Basically, you say like it's just like a really you could probably do this with like a switch operator. It'd be really gross. But basically saying like if this vector has x, y, and z, do this. If it has x and y, do this. And if it's just an array, then do this. Right? That's kind of the idea of how this kind of pattern matching is going to go. I think it's nice. It could be useful. It could really clean up some, gnarly things like if this, else this, else this, else this. Dead proposals. Object.observe, which I'm preaching to the choir now. So back in the day, I used to write Angular 1 when I was at Reddit. And there was kind of this like magical ceiling of like 2,000 things because Angular 1 did dirty checking, right? We're all familiar, we're all present, I think so, okay? And so we thought object.observe was going to save us all from the 2,000 limit. And so it got proposed, it got pushed through, people were really into it, and all of a sudden, at some point, people started to realize like, yeah, this is a horrible idea. Like we have just created like this giant bazooka and we're pointing it straight at our feet, right? Like it's just like the biggest foot gun that you can totally imagine. That we're gonna end up with these just crazy, crazy programs. And so at some point, like the light bulb went on for, I don't know, people like me that was a little slow to catch up on, and like, yeah, we should not do this. So it got really far and actually did get killed. I think it made it all the way to stage 3. SIMD, single instruction, multiple data. Is that, yeah? Okay, thanks, Jay. Actually, this was an awesome idea. It used to be called Riverwalk, and it was developed over at Intel. And basically, it was a way of introducing concurrency kind of in a gentle fashion to JavaScript, which has historically been totally single-threaded. And we were going to finally get concurrency primitives in JavaScript. Everyone's super excited about it. This was probably the best way to do it, best way to, in my opinion, to introduce it to JavaScript. And then this tiny little thing called WebAssembly came along. It's like, yeah, why are we doing it this way, right? Like, JavaScript right now has a really nice mental model because it is single-threaded. It's really easy to get through, to reason about, blah, blah, blah. Reason about, I hate that word. I just use it, I'm sorry. 10 points from Gryffindor. So, at that point, when WebAssembly came along, people realized it was going to be a thing. Everyone started kind of like getting on board. It's like, why don't we limit all this craziness like concurrency? Like if you need that sort of craziness, go get WebAssembly, right? Like it's out there, you can use it, and let's keep JavaScript a little bit more approachable, a little bit less complicated, and not introduce concurrency to it. And so at that point, even though SIMD was all the way in stage 3, I don't know if they've actually moved it out of stage 3, but they're going to if it hasn't already happened. And so this one actually is going to die in favor of keeping JavaScript a little bit more simple. So a lot of times people at this point ask me, like, how do I help? How do I help TC39? And the answer right now is they're not super good at receiving help. Like, to be totally honest with you, I think that's also an admitted problem on their part. So I'm going to tell you what I think you can do right now, which is use the new features, break them and abuse them, and just have a ton of fun with them. Like, that's really the best thing I think you can do with them. Talk about them, tweet about them, have an opinion about them, troll people about on Twitter. I'm all about that. Follow the TC39 proposals repo on GitHub. That's a really, really easy way to keep up to date. Like, literally everything I just showed you, I just pulled out of there. So I just gave this repo in presentation format. Propose your ideas. Like, I haven't yet, but if you have some sort of awesome idea, go for it. And really, contributing to Babel is actually a really, really great idea, because they really do need contributors, like, for real. Like, I'm not just saying that. Like, they really do need people to go on and, like, write documentation and maintain presets and maintain plugins, like stuff that really anyone that has time to could do. So please, please contribute to Babel. I'm going to give a shout out to battlepreset env. I don't think enough people are using it. A lot of people, when they start a new project, just throw in Babel RC preset ES2015 and move on with it, which is not the best idea, because browsers are kind of starting to catch up, right? Browsers now kind of have a lot of ES6 implemented. Like, I think WebKit, the nightly version of that, WebKit preview, the purple one. The purple one has 100% coverage of ES6. So the problem with including ES2015 preset is you're still transforming all of your code to ES5, and we want the browsers to start hitting these new code paths, right? So what battlepreset env is going to do for you, it's kind of like auto prefixer, that it just, over time, it starts transpiling less and less of your code for you, right? So you tell battlepreset env, please target the last 2 stable versions of all the latest browsers. And so what it's going to do is it's going to target based on whenever the last npm install you did, or the last version that you have of preset env, it's going to start targeting the last 2 versions of that. And then as you keep running, updating your preset env, it's going to start moving that target forward as new browsers are getting released. And so at this point, you're kind of transpiling less and less of your old code, and then you also have the ability to start introducing new code to your browser. So, pretty awesome. So yeah, thanks for listening.